Before the uprising had occurred, prisoners were living in grim conditions, enduring severe crowding, harassment from guards, lack of medical attention, racial prejudices, and an absence of proper hygiene, with rations of a single toilet paper roll each month, and one shower per week. Racial tensions were high as well, since all the prison guards were white, while 55% of the prison population was African American.
Conditions in 1971, before the rebellion, was bad. You know, bad food, bad educational programs, very, very low wages. We would call slave wages. You know, myself, I was working in laundry, and I was making like 30 cents a day, being the warden's laundry boy, and that was the title that you had with my job, warden's boy, and I'm far from a boy.
The revolt was unplanned, chaotic, and violent. September 9, 1971, rumors spread around the prison that an inmate had been killed the night before by a guard. The other inmates, fearing for their safety, started an uprising. A guard was attacked. The prison hallway stormed through, and a set of master keys stolen. Approximately 1,300 prisoners worked together in overthrowing the prison. The officers struggled to fight back and get help, but were helpless as only one phone call made at a time due to their phone system. In all the chaos, one guard died.
Commissioner of Corrections Russell Oswald agreed to negotiate.
I talked as rationally as I could with them and listened to them for some period of time, and ultimately they said they had an agenda of what they wanted. And I said, well, give me the agenda.
But due to miscommunications, trust was broken down and prisoners refused to talk directly with other people. However, political leaders and lawyers and the members of the Black Panther Party and Nation of Islam were invited by the prisoners, arriving on September 10, becoming negotiators themselves.
But if we cannot live as people, then we will at least try to die like men.
Proposals were exchanged over the next 2 days, but Oswald and Nelson Rockefeller, New York's governor, believed they couldn't resolve the situation using negotiations. September 3, Oswald read an ultimatum to the prisoners. In response, the prisoners held knives to the throats of blindfolded hostages. Helicopters then flew in, dropping down tear gas throughout the yard. Correction officers and state police broke in and started blasting. 29 inmates and 10 hostages were shot dead, while 89 others were wounded. Inmates were brutally controlled, being forced to do things such as crawling naked over broken glass and run a gauntlet of nightsticks.
Apparently, the method employed to get them to lie down was to hit them with a club across the knees, or in several instances, not too disguised attempts to hit them in the genitalia was made. Injury was done to prisoners at that point by the violence with which they were forced to lie on the ground and crawl across.
After the massacre, Public Information Officer of the New York Department of Corrections, Gerald Julian, gave false information to the press, stating that the prisoners had slit the throats of their hostages. Autopsies, however, revealed all hostages had died by gun wounds. A total of 43 people were slaughtered. Inmates filed an almost $3 billion lawsuit against state and prison officials in 1974. 18 years passed before the suit came to trial. Eventually, in January 2000, the inmates and the state of New York settled on a value of $8 million, which was distributed based on how severely injured they were from the attack.
You know, you gotta let me explain it this way. You know, it was very, very barbaric, you know, very, very cruel, and I really feel it. You know, what they really did, they ripped our clothes off. They made us crawl on the ground like we were animals, and they snatched me and they laid me on the table, and they beat me in my testicles, and they burned me with cigarettes, and they dropped hot shells on me, and they put a football up under my throat, and they kept telling me that if it dropped, they was gonna kill me. And I really felt, after seeing so many people shot, for no apparent reason, that we really were gonna do this.
The inmates at Attica who stood up and protested for their human rights paved the way for others to do the same. No prisoners before Attica were able to challenge the broken system enough to make a lasting impact. The inmates at Attica were the first to spread awareness to the abuses that they were being subjected to, which then affects the way that the prison system is run. During the negotiations with state officials, 5 inmates, Herbert Blyden X, Donald Nobel, Carl Jones L., Frank Lott, and Peter Butler, created the Attica Liberation Faction Manifesto of Demands, an official list of 27 grievances about harsh mistreatment, unfair visitation regulations, and poor food quality, among other complaints. The negotiations were in vain, however, seeing that Corrections Services Commissioner Russell G. Oswald and other invited politicians and reporters were unable to agree on changes for prison regulations. Even though the inmates were unable to accomplish and resolve all their grievances, they were able to resolve many regulations. The prisoners now had a grievance procedure where they would be able to inform staff members and officers of their complaints that violated a policy without fear of physical harm. They were also allowed to receive packages year-round, and they were given a program where senior managers and correctional officers would meet monthly with the elected representatives of the prisoners. The inmates at Attica broke barriers by being the first prisoners to improve their living conditions and set democratic regulations by civilly negotiating with their superiors. The uprising affected the nation by changing the way that the criminal justice system is run.
The top officials involved in handling the situation knew that Rockefeller sending in state troops after refusing to negotiate with prisoners would result in a massacre, and moved forward in their plans. In one of his released tapes, President Nixon revealed that they justified their actions by saying, "You see, it's the black business. He had to do it."
Are these primarily blacks that you're dealing with? Yes. The whole thing was led by the blacks. Are all the prisoners that were killed blacks? Are there any whites? I haven't got that report.
After the incident happened, government officials spread misinformation to prove they were justified in their actions. Lies, such as that the white hostages had been castrated and killed by black prisoners, were said. The Attica prison riot was one of the bloodiest revolts in American history, placing a spotlight on the terrible living conditions, abuse, and inhumanity behind bars. The event created a storm of controversy throughout the country, planting the seed for the current-day prisoners' rights movement. The riot became a reminder in America's history of what unfair and inhumane prison system resulted in.
William Kunstler has said that people are dying in there. Helicopters are still flying overhead. It seems there was an announcement from the helicopter right above me to the inmates below that they should put their hands on their heads and come out. I don't know whether anyone has died inside. I'm upset. This is unfortunate what has happened here. Whatever happens, after the situation here at Attica, a penal system here in the United States and the people who are kept in inside of them will never be the same.